States, menstrual leave for students and working Indian women. Kerala and Bihar already allow menstrual leave. Countries world over have been divided over it. Only 6 countries in the world have a period leave policy. Menstrual leave hotly contested, even amongst feminists. Time to talk period, leave or no leave. Top focus on To The Point this evening.
The fact is, viewers, it's a highly polarizing gender debate, for a lot of us, not all, but a lot of us who are struggling to get out of bed, struggling with menstrual cramps. Many would see this as something, why should they be applying for sick leave? Because they are not sick, they are suffering from a biological event, and that should be mandated where every month they don't have to apply for sick leave or cut into their vacation days. On the other hand, there's a larger debate which goes on to suggest that if we start asking for menstrual leave, which are women, are we taking the fight of womanhood or, where we are as a country where women's rights are concerned? Aren't we taking a step back where we are reinforcing old gender stereotypes? However, the advocates of menstrual leave also go on to say that, listen, we are equal, but we are just not identical. We are not men. We do have periods, and why must we not talk about it openly and, apply for sick leave in silence? We are not sick. So all of that, we're going to break it apart right here in the next 20 minutes. Joining me on this show will be, in a short while, Trisha Shetty, social activist, Ranjana Kumari, chairperson CSR, Dr. Geeta Bhatt, academic, Adwaita Kala, author and Bollywood screenwriter. Every woman's allowed an opinion. Some of them would be subjective, some of them will look at it in a very objective fashion. And I would reckon, Adwaita, you come from that, where you possibly feel that period leave, especially in a country like India, is not somewhere we need to venture in, right now at least.
I think, Preeti, you're absolutely right. Being a woman myself, I can't help but, realize the need for period leave. But one has to be objective about this particular situation in a way that one would with any privilege. And this comes down to a privilege. Now, let's look at the facts. About 15% to 20% of women who suffer from period pain have pain that cannot be handled through normal medical intervention, like popping a pill or something like that. They do need injections. They do need that kind of medical intervention. Now, on an anecdotal basis as well, I know of women who have tremendous period pain, and then I know of women who can run marathons when it comes to when they're on their period. So you have that wide spectrum of experience as well. Now, if you look at it from the perspective of the workplace, now I did a little research, and like you rightly pointed out, it's only about 5 or 6 countries that do have this, and 2 states in India. A lot of times when it comes to women and feminist policies and things like that, one naturally gravitates to see what the Scandinavian countries are doing, because they seem to have the most progressive and inclusive policies. Now, if you look at Sweden, which defines itself as a feminist government, they don't have period leave per se. They say that you can take it with your sick leave. You can use that for your period leave, and that's completely permissible, and it's up to 2 to 3 days in a month. And what they aim for, and this is where I join force with them, is menstrual awareness workplaces, workplaces that are menstrually aware. And I think that is an important step forward, because even today, in a lot of our workplaces, when we say you need to make them more women-friendly, do we have break rooms? Do we have medication? Do we have sanitary pads that are freely accessible? Do we even have a hot water bottle? These are that's the kind of menstrually aware workplace that we need to work towards, I think, rather than segregating women once more, like was done in the past. We've only just emerged from that era when women were locked into a room during the course of their period and kept away from the rest of the family. So why are we asking for that by choice? Let us find a way to navigate this. There is no shame, of course. We're all on the same page as far as that is concerned. But let's look at this from the perspective of gender equality, and then the layers and layers of complication. What about cisgender men? Will they feel excluded? Now, is this only going to be for women or is it going to be for people with uteruses? I mean, there's so many layers. What about mental health breaks? That can apply to men as well. What about PMS? The hormonal imbalances that may make you a little bit, have a bit of a mood swing before your period. And once you get your
Okay.
period, it's like a pressure valve has been released. Now, those are the tropes that we've sort of moved away from, where women, oh, she's PMSing, so she's stark raving mad. Those are the kind of things that we've left behind. I just don't think we need to
Okay.
open the door to that in
All
the
right,
name
Adwaita,
of menstrual.
I'm going to abstain from giving my point of view just yet, but I want to bring in Trisha Shetty, so the social activist. And Trisha, I believe, you're one of those who believes that the time for period leave has come. What are your factors that you think that a country like India should and could move ahead by a mandated period leave?
Firstly, thank you for having this conversation on mainstream media. Now, why am I an advocate for period leave? We have research that says a man's pain is taken more seriously within the medical community and beyond than a woman's pain. To be very specific, when a man complains of abdominal pain, they have an average period of 49 minutes before they get medical intervention, as opposed to 65 minutes that women have to wait for exhibiting the same symptoms. Right? There's also research that came out as of 4 years ago, I believe, that said period pain is as bad as heart attacks, to sort of draw an equivalence to how bad truly it is for many menstruating people. Now, when we talk about period pain, we don't often account for conditions like endometriosis, conditions like dysmenorrhea, also people who menstruate who have excessive bleeding, who often worry about have they stained their pants. As Adwaita rightfully pointed out, the lack of access to sanitation, which is a very real problem within infrastructure at workplaces, within schooling. If you talk specifically about India, the second leading cause for young girls to drop out of school is lack of access to poor sanitation after forced labor. We also have data that says if you invest in a girl's education, for 1 year, you see an return in the country's GDP increasing by 0.2 percentage point. A girl who stays in school for 1 year in higher education ends up gaining upwards of 25% in wages later on in her life. Right? So if you want to address climate crisis, the most cost-effective measure is investing in young girls' education and sexual and reproductive healthcare rights. So if you want to talk about from a purely data, country's economic strength perspective, it makes absolute objective sense, and I keep using the word objective, to invest in making sure we remove the barriers. And these barriers are very real. Also, let me just quickly round up by saying,
Yes,
it's easy to say pop a pill, but you're, again, taking painkillers which have very real side effects through the rest of your life. You're not popping some hajmula or candy that has no adverse effects on your body and popping a pill for a period cycle that you get once every 3 weeks. You're basically telling women, instead of just removing these barriers and acknowledging that they are much more efficient if they can say work from home, if they can work within sanitary conditions, as well as the country does better economically, workplaces do better economically. If you just remove these barriers and rather than telling them, why don't you just pop a pill? We've been doing it for years. It just makes no economical sense. It doesn't do well all around for not just women, but everyone as a whole.
Trisha, you have a point of view, and I'm just playing the devil's advocate on both sides, because you say that, it's important to remove barriers, but ultimately, who are we removing barriers for? Because our regularized workforce, where women are concerned, is actually less than 32%. So you're technically removing those barriers only for 32%. Not that you shouldn't, because yes, the 78% doesn't quite benefit because that's the unregularized sector. But even if we talk about figures and we talk about data, and I'm going to take that question to Dr. Geeta Bhatt as well, because she does believe that period leave is not the way to go, especially in India. When you talk about cold figures in terms of the maternity leave, which was also debated hotly before we had a 6-month mandated maternity leave. Now, what it did was it benefited the 32%, and now Oxfam data actually suggests, Trisha, that of that 32% workforce where women are concerned, there has been a drop of 22% women in the workforce in the biological age because they are just not being hired anymore. So, is it counterproductive? In an utopian world, in a Nordic country, maybe it fits in perfectly, but does it fit in India? No, these are all arguments. And I just want to bring in Geeta Bhatt on the same. Geeta Bhatt, the fact is, because a certain set of women, which it could include practically all of us, have suffered through our periods. Some of us are lucky, we don't have debilitating periods, and there are others who suffer from various conditions. They're not sick, it's a medical condition that they suffer from, which is something which is a biological event. So just because the lot of us suffered through it without a period leave mandated, should the others as well? If instead of turning around and calling them too woke that you want period leave, shouldn't we actually accept that, yes, we are equal, but we are not identical to men, and this is something that is required, maybe not for all.
Well, Preeti, yes, as you said that, menstruation, it is a natural biological cycle which women face every month. And when we are talking about a menstruation leave, true, there are many women who face, a lot of cramps and they feel uncomfortable in some of these days. But we do have to also look at this point of view that when we are asking for it as a leave, do we consider it as given as a medical condition? And when we are trying to compare it vis-a-vis the maternity leave, you see, in maternity leave, anywhere, whether it is in a private organization or in a government organization, you do need certain certification for that purpose. And also the maternity leave is granted, at least in India, only for 2 children, not more than 2 children. If you have more than 2 children, then you're not entitled to any maternity leave. So there are certain clauses. What I'm trying to say is that there are certain clauses when we are talking here. What is being proposed or discussed is a blanket leave for all women in any kind of work condition. Yes, women who are working in a labor force, women who are working where there is physical labor involved, those who are in the armed forces, those who are going in for battle exercises, these women, if they are undergoing these or have these in these special days, then yes, there could be a consideration. But considering that there will be a blanket leave, given a blanket leave, especially for example for students, you're saying that university students, they need to be given a blanket leave. Like some universities, I think in Kerala, they have Kerala government has gone ahead with this kind of a leave. Tomorrow there could be a condition where a woman student has to sit for an exam, and she says that she has this particular menstrual cycle condition where she is not able to sit for an exam. Then what is the stand the university or the administration is going to take? So we need to look at it in an objective manner, and vis-a-vis the maternity leave which is given in some of the southeastern countries, we do have to look into this, that there it was basically keeping in mind that a large number of women who are there working in labor forces in sweat factories, where they had to stand for hours together, you can't even go for to urinate. So, and the kind of facilities which were provided to them were very poor. So, because of this particular provision,
Right. But Dr. Geeta, the sad part is in India, the 78% of the workforce which possibly lives and works in the kind of conditions you're talking about, we're not even talking about them because that's not regularized. But, you talk about pregnancy, but pregnancy is a choice, Dr. Bhatt. Menstruation is not. There's a huge difference there. But Dr. Ranjana Kumari is also joining us, Chairperson CSR. Dr. Kumari, you're an advocate that period leave somewhere down the line needs to be mandated, regularized by the country. The question is, will we somewhere down the line, and it's a fear that I also have, reinstate old gender stereotypes that we want to rid ourselves of? Tough luck, being a woman in India is not easy. It's been there. The whole trajectory of women's rights in the country has been very, very difficult. Are we somewhere down the line not really looking at what we need, which is maybe to get a pad to a 13-year-old who has no access to sanitary pads? Maybe talk about menstruation, where it's a taboo in most cities. Talk about getting ultrasounds done, which is a need. Are we missing it all for maybe, could be a privilege for 32% of the Indian women workforce? Shouldn't we talk about real issues?
Well, Preeti, I agree with most of the observations you have made while asking me this question, but I really welcome the step to make period leave as leave for women. And it has happened recently in Spain, as you know, this discussion has started because a lot of countries are accepting that whole reality that women do go through, and there are many different kinds of medical and physical condition where these are unbearable pain, almost death-like pain, very, very difficult for the girls to move. And I think it's important for rest of the society, and it's gaining the kind of years that we need, because even inside the parliament, who would have ever imagined the prime minister would speak about of India would speak about menstruation and facilities for the girls and all those issues. But in this budget session, the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, did talk about it and did mention this. That means that there is a growing understanding about the biology of a woman and a man, and also the needs of a woman and a man. And also there is nothing like, this taboo is breaking. So first thing is that the taboo about menstruation is breaking. And also, but what is important to understand is that certainly you are so right about informal sector women who do back-breaking in spite of all the pain and everything, whether it is agricultural labor or informal sector labor, in the, where construction worker labor. This is true, but then no labor laws are
Dr.
applicable.
Kumari, we come from an acute point of privilege.
Security there. So, but then listen, let's move step by step. Let's move step by step. Let's accept this problem, and we need to legislate. And then, as you know, in Spain, not every woman can all the time avail this leave. Only there are medical conditions, and I think those certification will have to be done. So, what is wrong with that? If somebody can say, I have a PCOS and I'm really dying of this pain, I can't come, I can't move. Why should that person not be getting the leave? So let's move step by step, and I think it's a very, very welcome thing to for a nation to really consider that whole reproductive process is
right. Dr. Kumari, there are various points of views, and I'm going to bring in Trisha Shetty, who stands by you, where you're saying that it's a very welcome move and the PIL, should be entertained by the Supreme Court and we should be looking at menstrual leave. But Trisha Shetty, sadly, we live in a country where we are still fighting for combat roles. When it comes down to the services, we are still fighting for combat positions. When it comes down to the Indian force, there is so much else that we are fighting for. And if we are actually going to put our neck out for period leave, how are we going to sit across a table and negotiate on those terms?
I think we can negotiate on those terms very justly. Look, there is this sort of false equivalency that if we talk about one set of rights when it comes to women, we sort of negate all the other fights and progress that we have made. One, as women, and forget women, as people as a whole, we need to move away from this glorification of struggle that women tend to go through, right? Glorification of struggle, of pain, of sacrifice. I think therein lies the problem. We will not have any progress if we continue to tell people who are menstruating, who are in extreme pain, pop pills. Just suck it up and deal with it, because that's what I did. That's what your grandmother did. Do you know how badly we had it? Also, a fight for women within rural spaces does not negate the fight for women within urban spaces. We're all asking for the same thing, for access to sanitation, for access to bleed, for your right to bleed with dignity. And that's it. So if that means, of course, when we talk about the labor sector within villages, we're asking also for them.
No, but that sector is very much, Trisha, that sector that you talk about is just not the rural-urban divide. Actually, to be honest, if one looks at figures, then the unorganized sector lives where you and I live.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but how will their children continue their education when I'm telling you the data says the second leading cause for their kids, if we're really advocating for their rights, for dropping out of school is lack of access to menstrual sanitation after forced labor. Mm-hmm. So this policy will directly help them. And we have data that says women who are educated invest up to 90% back into the economy. And what are the sectors they invest back into? Once they enter the informal or formal sector, they invest in education, they invest in healthcare, they invest on infrastructure. All of it further strengthens the country's resilience as a whole. So again, if we're talking also about women within the informal sector, they are kids. are not able to continue their education once they reach menstruating age because they don't have access to sanitation, they don't have access to period products.
That's the conversation, Trisha, and I think we're all on board with that conversation. I'll bring Adwaita in as well, that yes, access to sanitation, access to possibly a sanitary pad, which if you actually look at figures, 63% of Indian young women don't have access to. But will period leave solve that? But Adwaita, with what Trisha said, why can't you have two conversations at the same time where you talk about, access to all of that we've discussed, and on the other hand, even if it is a minuscule 32%, even if it is for the privileged lot, why shouldn't it make their lives easier? Why should they be falling sick every month when they're not sick?
I think there are two aspects to this. I think we can definitely have that conversation. I don't think if you focus on one section or on one demographic, then the other perceived as privileged should not get the benefit that we want for another section of society. So on that, I'm completely on board. Now, again, period pain, PMS symptoms, these are a spectrum. 15 to 20%, again, I repeat, epidemiologists have conducted studies, are the cases that on average that women have these kind of extreme episodes of period pain, and this can be triggered by certain conditions. We've seen PCOD also increasing, especially in urban India, because of lifestyle changes that triggers intense period pain. So it's quite likely that future generations of women will suffer more from it because of lifestyle changes. There's no denying that. But however, again, I want to go back to your point, Preeti, because I think you made a very important point about the percentage of women in the unorganized sector. Now, I come from an industry like hospitality, and I, of course, worked in five-star hotels. So it was air-conditioned environment, it was having a break room and all of those facilities, but it was extremely physically laborious work. There were days and days on ends when one would have to be on one's feet for 17 hours, cleaning rooms, washing tables, serving people, non-stop, day after day, month after month, and it was physically extremely demanding. So I can completely empathize, especially on our construction sites, where you're right, those are all urban dwellers as well, the women who work on those construction sites. Unfortunately, this period leave is not really going to get to them. And I think it's very important that menstrually aware workplaces is really where the focus should be. And of course, I think Ranjana Kumari ji also rightly said that when there is a mitigating health circumstance which makes sure that your period pain is unbearable, by all means avail of it. But I think as a sweeping sort of facility for everybody, I think it's the other thing that we have not talked about, and we will be talking about at some point, is the kind of employment opportunities that will be available to women, especially in the corporate sector, in the desk job sector, wherein they have access to period leave like that, and productivity when it comes to promotions. There's so many layers involved in something like this. I think we need to have a humane.
And Dr. Kumari, you want to make I'm just coming in, Adwaita. Dr. Kumari, I'm running short of time. I want to get a word in from all of you again. Dr. Kumari, with what Adwaita said, on the other hand, because we're looking at figures, you were the biggest advocate. I remember interviewing you when we got 6 months of maternity leave. It's great. Of course, women need it, and it's really helped a lot of women not fall out of the workforce. But what it's also done, and these are plain hard numbers, that out of the 32% of organized workforce where women are concerned, there's been a fall of 22% of hiring in the biological age where women technically get pregnant. So we are actually cutting them out of the workforce as well.
Well, Preeti, I think let's look at the work participation rate of women has fallen in India, not only in the urban organized sector, but also in the unorganized sector, even in the agriculture, so by 10%. I mean, like overall, we are somewhere in the bottom when you look at the number of women who work in other country in the working age, then what happens in India. And the factors are not health-related leave or pregnancy-related leave. The factors are more social, because women are really, there are more pull factor from family, society, from all responsibility, all those things. And plus also, of course, now adding to that is the threat and the danger that a lot of young women face outside when they go to work in terms of all kinds of violence against and crime against women. So that's another thing altogether. But when it comes to pregnancy leave, and also now period leave, or you can say pain leave. If you have a pain leave, then you are not every woman all the time is going to ask for it. This is the whole thing. And also, why should we assume that something like this will not reach the informal sector? In fact, we have to make more and more progressive decisions like these, so that all women benefited. When you make a law, you don't make a law for a section of women, but unfortunately all women cannot enjoy those facilities.
But Dr. Kumari, maternity leave, we keep talking about, we haven't had the basic sanitation that has reached the unorganized sector. So yes, I would think it's utopian. I know I'm coming in, I've cut you short on that. I just want to get in a quick word from Dr. Geeta Bhatt as well. And are we just looking, Dr. Bhatt, and I think we're all on board on that, for those of us who are not on board with mandated period leave, that we should at least be looking at a period policy?
Well, Preeti, yes, I do. Yes, I do agree, and I would like to take forward what Ranjana ji was mentioning. That you see, menstruation as a taboo in this country, and we need to laud the Prime Minister, for this. When from the ramparts of not only in the Parliament but from the ramparts of the Red Fort, he spoke about this and also talked about not just about talking, also facilitating these women by the Jan Aushadhi Kendras, where more than 8,000 plus of them are providing sanitary pads at ₹1 cost. So this kind of, facilitation, providing them facilities is something which is very, very significant. Also, I want to add one small point over here. We are talking about working women, but nobody is thinking about that. What about the women who are working at home, who are homemakers? I mean, the amount of work which requires, the amount of time one spends inside the house doing household work, who is going to talk about their menstruation leave?
Fair enough. I appreciate all you, 4 women for joining us. It's contentious. It might, it really isn't controversial if you look at it, but it is contentious. It's divisive, this debate, where most of us who want women to get ahead and the best really are not on the same page on the topic. I actually feel, viewers, that you have to look at it subjectively and objectively. Subjectively, does it work for a Preeti Choudhry? Definitely it works. I'll get a day off if I have period cramps. Objectively, for my country, I'm not a Nordic country. I don't live in a Nordic country or a Scandinavian country. I don't have those kind of standards. So I need to look at, if I have to use my voice once, because nobody's going to give me free handouts when I talk about women's rights here. I can use it for period pain, or I can use it for the 72% who don't even have access to basic sanitation. Some of them work through their periods. I'd rather use it for that, but each to their own, because I don't have the kind of debilitating pain that a lot of my friends have when they have endometriosis or cramps which completely take them down, that every month they have to apply for a sick leave. They're not sick. We leave it for you to decide. There's a PIL coming up on the 24th of February, this Friday. Trust India Today to get you the latest on that. Thank you for all the 4 women, ladies who joined us. Up next is Rahul Kanwar.
Leave.